Hello, I'm Tom Bankston. This is bankbeat.biz, Quick Takes video blog. And I'm really pleased today to have Jack Kasel with us. He is a sales development expert with the Anthony Cole Training Group. Jack, thanks for being with us.
Tom, thanks for the invitation. Looking forward to our conversation.
This is a very interesting time, I believe, to be talking about sales. With the pandemic in place, there's probably a sense of kind of needing to hunker down. Maybe people aren't looking for opportunities in this environment, but I'd like for you to share your thoughts on that. Are there opportunities to be had at this time, and what's the best way to pursue them if there are?
Wow, great question, and you're right. And let's face it, there are companies out there that are challenged, and they're really hurting, but there's a lot of companies that are still thriving and in doing good business. And Tom, what I heard you say, we see a lot of. I call it, if we had kids, they went through that phase of terrible twos, and in relationship managers, the terrible twos in their heads, they're too busy, they're too happy, they're too this, they're too that, and we can't get a chance to get with them. So here's what I know, Tom, is that we have to be sensitive. We can't be tone deaf. We have to pivot our message a little bit. But there's still people out there trying to grow their business, and let's face it, they need help from bankers to help them do that. And so pivoting the message. The last several weeks, we call on banks, and if I call a bank CEO and ask her about doing some sales training, she might reach through that phone and strangle me, because I'm just that tone deaf, not knowing what's going on with her and her team. So, but I can't not call. I've got to still, but I got to pivot my message and figure out what do they need right now to get them through this very challenging time. And here's the other thing we find, Tom, is that averages, it takes about anywhere from 12 to 14 attempts for a person to start a relationship and begin the conversation. The downside of that, Tom, is most relationship managers give up after 4 contacts. So stay in the grind, change your message. There's people out there that still need what you do.
That is a really interesting piece of experiential knowledge. That, what do you say, a dozen to 14 efforts before you get through?
Yep.
What in the world? How do people find it within themselves to sustain the effort after being, denied a half dozen, 7, 8, 9 times?
Yep. And we call that grit. What am I willing to do that I haven't done before? And again, Tom, an example that we're doing right now. A couple of months ago, if I'd have said, "Hey, Tom, do you ever think about doing a Zoomcast blog?" You go, "Yeah, I don't need to do that." But here we are today. And so we need people like Tom Bankston, who is willing and able to do something they haven't done in the past. What can I do differently? And so one of the things we're seeing a little bit different, may seem hokey, but we've had people have coffee with a prospect or a customer in the parking lot. Okay, you're in your car, I'm in my car. I hand a cup of coffee through the window. We have a conversation. Having a virtual lunch. I call up and I order food and I have it sent in to Tom, and we open up a Zoomcast, and you're having your lunch, I'm having my lunch, and we're having a conversation, and we're helping the local community. I've even had some bankers say, "Hey, hey, you want to go for a walk?" You get out, you get some exercise, you keep the social distancing. But the whole question is this: what are you willing to do to help be successful and bring opportunities and help the people you're having conversations with?
And community banking, of course, is a relationship-based business. It's sort of the primary, it's the foundation of the business model flow. And you just made some really interesting suggestions for ways to keep relationships going or to try to start relationships. Have you found, are bankers using these tools? And are there other examples you can share? I think this is super interesting.
Sure, it is. And when I bring this suggestion to people, they're kind of taken back a little bit. And again, it gets back to do they have the grit to do, we call them wits, whatever it takes. And then within the legal, moral, and ethical boundaries, whatever it takes to find opportunities. And so you mentioned relationship building, and some people get that confused. They think I want to come in and I want to be Tom Bengston's friend. No, we have to be polite. We have to be professional, but we don't need to be friends. We need to be friendly. And so relationship building is simply this. What insights can I bring to Tom, the CEO of Bengston Enterprises, that'll help him grow his business? What questions can I ask? What conversations can I get into? And I challenge the bankers that we work with. How far into the conversation can you get without talking about you, your bank, your products, and your services? Because if I'm not talking about me, guess who I'm talking about, Tom? You. And that's where the conversation starts. And that's relationship creating. What business insight, what business acumen can I bring to this conversation that'll help you as you look to grow and run your business?
And so you talk about grit, you use the expression wits. Do you find that these kinds of characteristics are something that can be developed in almost anyone, or is this something that you have to be born with? You know, we've
Well,
heard that there are introverts and extroverts, and that extroverts are better at sales. I don't know really whether that's true or not, but what's your take on it?
hey, great question, Tom. And we work with banks across the nation. And let's face it, I work with both. I work with people that are tremendously extroverted. They're outgoing and gregarious, and they have great conversation. I work with people that are somewhat introverted. And guess what? Both of them have success. The ones that have the greatest success are the ambiverts. If I'm calling on Tom and he's an extrovert, can I be an extrovert? If I call on Tom and he's an introvert, can I be an introvert? And so the whole thing gets down to this. Can I bring value to the meeting? And people talk about, well, I need my value proposition, and here's what the bank stands for, and here's our mission statement. No, I'm talking about, can you be the value? And you become the value by how you engage in conversations and ask people questions. I call them the IDKs. That I ask a question and I get an IDK. I don't know. I'm not sure. Nobody's ever asked me that question before. I never thought about it that way. Now I'm developing relationships. Now I'm bringing value. Now I'm making a difference in that person's business.
And when a salesperson is successful, do you find that that's something that they've created on their own, or is it generally a team effort? And when
Wow.
you train and when your organization trains a bank, you focus on the individuals in the bank, or are you trying to develop the whole team?
Wow. Another great question. We do both. And I find great value if I'm standing in front of a group of relationship managers and we're having conversation and I'm presenting content and Susie says this and Joe thinks, wow, I never thought about it that way. Maybe I'll try that. Or hey, I wouldn't say the way he said it, but I'm gonna put that into my repertoire. And so it's a combination of both. Let's face it, there's nobody as smart as all of us. And we're actually pivoting how we go about our business. We're doing more virtual training. We can do stuff online through Zoomcast like we're doing now. We can have poll questions in breakout rooms, and we can play Kahoot. We can do music. We can take breaks, all those things. But I love both. I love the group interaction, and I love the one-on-one individual coaching as well. And so it all gets back into simply this: like you made a decision, Tom. Like you're going to run this a little bit different. And so by doing so, now you're helping the banks and the people that are part of your association.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, we'll wrap up on one more question here. Of course, the pandemic, the health crisis that we're in is posing all kinds of new challenges. Businesses are having to adapt their practices in order to continue in this environment. But of course, we're also in a recession now. The business is slow, it's depressed, and we don't know how long it's going to last. But how does a business go about finding opportunity in a recession when it seems like people are paring back on their expenses? Are there still ways that businesses can find opportunities and grow economically?
Right. I'm going to say this, and try not to be offensive, but let's face it, the next several weeks are not going to be kind to weak salespeople. And the next several weeks are not going to be kind to banks that have weak salespeople because, Tom, we're moving from a playing checkers to playing chess. And we have to be able to adapt and adjust because there are now new constraints. I can't come into Tom Bengston's office right now. We have to keep apart, and so I like to use the rule of threes. I have to work 3 times as hard. I have to talk to 3 times as many people. I have to put as 3 times as much pipe in my pipeline to have the same relative success in a good economic situation. And so we're just coming out of probably one of the greatest economic situations we've had. Now we're going into probably one of the worst ones. And I look at salespeople like special ops. If we take a person that is part of the armed services as special ops, no matter where we put them, they're going to make it. They've been trained, they've been coached, they've been put into situations. So my question when I talk to bankers, if you look at your best banking relationship manager, if you're in Minnesota and we pick him or her up and put them in downtown LA, do they have the wherewithal to be successful? Can they survive? Can they have a reasonable chance of success? We call that viability. How viable is my team going forward? And so those are all the things, the conversations we're having with bank CEOs across the country.
Jack, very interesting material. Thank you for sharing this with our audience today. I've been speaking to Jack Kasel. He's at the Anthony Cole Training Group. Jack, why don't you just share your email address with folks if they want to follow up with you?
Hey, thank you, Tom. And yes, we'll take any and all interaction. It's simply this, Jack at Anthony Cole Training.com. And Anthony, Anthony, Cole, Cole, Training.com. Any question, any inquiry, given the current situation we're in right now, Tom, I won't say no.
All right. Well, we appreciate that. Thank you for being with us. I'm Tom Bengston. This is BankBeat.biz Quick Takes video blog.